That said, I do think that there are a couple of other mitigating issues that we must address, and this is one that I do think has validity. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and I do think that one of the reasons that that has been happening is because of this relentless attack by the Israeli government on the Palestinians, and it is boomeranging back towards the Jewish communities in this country. We've seen it in Manhattan. I haven't really seen it down here. We've seen it in Los Angeles. I do think that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And what is the right way to go about it? Because as Jen, as you said many times, there really must be a distinction between American Jews and Israelis. And I think a lot of people...
there's a distinction between Judaism and Zionism. Those are completely unrelated things.
So
they're unrelated. But I do think that Peter's right, that the Israel's behavior and the constant linking of Zionism to anti-Semitism has now made it where there's legitimate anti-Semitism based on the actions of the state of Israel. And I think that we are seeing backlash from that. I do. And I think that it's a big problem.
Well, Donna, I don't want to monopolize.
Okay, go ahead, and I'll speak after you.
Yeah. Okay, so anti-Semitism and the rise of anti-Semitism is a reality, and one that must be taken very seriously. It is, however, primarily a phenomenon of the white nationalist movement in this country. There's very little of it that comes from supporters of Palestinian rights. And I will say, the allegations of anti-Semitism are frequently simply bogus. I've got to tell you, bogus. I've experienced it myself, where I was quoted for a talk that I gave. I did not say what they claimed I said, and what they claimed I said was anti-Semitic. It was a simple, outright lie. That incident in Los Angeles that you were referring to, I think the demonstrators who were driving by a restaurant and were claimed to have attacked Jews who were sitting there. I've looked at studies of what actually happened. What appears to actually have happened was that some young men who were sitting in the restaurant got into it over politics, not over their Jewish identity or anything else. And it was essentially a conflict over politics, not an anti-Semitic attack as such. So, there's definitely a problem with anti-Semitism. We saw it in Charlottesville. We've seen it since. In Pittsburgh, it's a reality, and it's ugly, and it's got to be faced and dealt with. But it is not a function of the pro-Palestinian movement and the pro-justice movement in this country.
I'll say your last line, I think, is really true, and I think it's a very pernicious attempt. Again, it's a propaganda attempt to smear the Palestinian liberation movement unjustly. I also think a lot of times when people are quoting about anti-Semitism, they're using statistics from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, which is I'm part of a campaign that many of our groups are part of, called Drop the ADL, because they are an organization that has a history from its inception. It's not just that they've changed, of targeting communities of color, of targeting Palestinians and Muslims, of targeting activists and activist groups, of infiltrating groups. And it is a fact that they link, when you look at their incidents of anti-Semitism, criticism of Israel is included in their list. So I think it's very important that we're able to separate real anti-Semitism when it occurs from this relentless attempt and attack by Zionist organizations and the Israeli government to conflate, to accuse supporters of Palestinian justice with anti-Semitism. And as I said, this is a long, long history. If you all remember the Goldstone report with Justice Goldstone, I mean, when he was part of the report on what happened in Gaza and laid out the atrocities that were going on in Gaza, and the accusations against him were it just, they never ended. And to say that, Palestinians, of course, and Black activists have seen the largest brunt of this, but it's also, those of us who speak out for justice for Palestinians. And, just to mention something in Florida, well, of course, we know there's an IHRA definition, the IHRA definition that's been of anti-Semitism that has as examples criticism of Israel, anti-Semitism that's going around. And in the state of Florida, we have an anti-Semitism bill that's based on that definition. So it's really an attempt now to criminalize, to control, to thwart, and as as many people will say who've been on the receiving end of this, it destroys your career, it can destroy your career, it can destroy your livelihood, and they really attempt to destroy your soul.
And the other thing we see a lot, I mean, there are now 30 states in this country that have anti-BDS legislation on the books. And this is something that's outrageous. And for the most part, those laws slip through with very little acknowledgement or fanfare. They just sort of slip them in. Most people have no idea that these laws even exist. And then you go to apply for, let's say, to be a contractor, an audiologist for a public school in Texas, and you have to sign away your right to your First Amendment rights in order to, be loyal to the state of Israel. And that is something that's happened. And Florida is, of course, one of those 30 states that has anti-BDS legislation on the books. But yeah, people don't even realize that. And that's a real sift to me. Now we're getting into like my civil liberties. I don't care what your opinion may or may not be about Israel, but the fact that there could be an impediment to how we use our money and how we, speak our voice it's an outrage. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.